In this project, we are going to use the Next.js and Firebase to create this WhatsApp clone. And now you can see this WhatsApp clone has the interface that is exactly the same as the real WhatsApp. And you can see this background. And you can also see if we reduce the size of the WhatsApp, you can see it take up the whole screen, and this is the same as the WhatsApp. And also you can see we have the last active time, the latest message, and also the timestamp. And we will store these informations to the firestore, and we also employ the Firebase authentication so we can log out with the Firebase, and also we log in with Google. So the user can log in with Google account and send message to his friend. And also you can see there are different styles for the message. If this is the owner message, it's shown on the right side, and this is the receiver message, it's shown on the left side with white color. And I think you're also aware that we also use the react useRef to make this scroll to bottom function. So every time when you send a new message, it will scroll to the bottom. So the user do not need to scroll down every time to look at his message. So I think this will make you learn a lot with working on this WhatsApp clone project. And so let's get started. We are going to create a Next.js project, and we are going to create this WhatsApp. And you can see inside the WhatsApp we have the green and gray background, and we also have the sidebar and also the content. But this time we also just need to create this index page rather than this chat page. And you should also notice that when you have a smaller screen, the WhatsApp will go to full size without the background. So now we go to create the Next.js project. So first we are going to these folders, and then we type npx create next app, and then we type WhatsApp teach, and then we type cd WhatsApp teach. And then inside this project, or we go to the code dot first to go to the VS Code. And then inside the terminal, we go to add the styled component because we will use the styled components inside this project. So we type yarn add, and then styled components. And then we go to type yarn dev to go to the server. And now we can see there is another file is running in port 3000, and after we cancel this, we type yarn dev again. And then if we go to localhost 3000, and we can see this website. So now we are going to delete all these unnecessary coding. So we back to the index. The index.js is something that here, for example, if we do not type Next.js and we type welcome to CK Mobile, and this will automatically change to CK Mobile, and we do not need all of this, so except this header. So now we delete all of this. And now all of these already removed. And now we want to make this background colors. So we go to the global.css, and then we add this style. So we have two colors. One is the green one, and the other is the white. And this is just the fallback colors in case that some browser cannot show linear gradient colors. So we save this, and we back to our website. You can see this WhatsApp background colors. Now after we already added the background, we are going to create the layout, and we are going to create this layout that all the pages has this sidebar, and we will create this box to hold the chat app. So now we go to our project, and inside this we create a new folders, and which is components. So we create new folders and type components. And then inside this, we create a layout.js, and we will also create sidebar.js, and we just type the sidebar at here first, and then we back to our layout, and then we type underscore RAFCE, and then we are going to use the style component, so we import the style from styled components, and then we also import the sidebar from sidebar, and for the layout we will pass the children, pass all the components here, so we pass the children, and then underneath this one we are going to create a constant wrapper is equal to style dot div, and then we set the display as flags, and then the flags direction is column, and then the justify content is center. So what we want to do is to make this box is at the centers of the web page, and then we use the align items center, and the height is 100 real height, and then we also create a container which is using the display flags, and the width is 75 real width, and it also has the height of 100 real height. The margin top and the margin bottom is we want to make this has some margin at the top and also at the bottom. And at this media query, if you have used WhatsApp before, you should know that when the browser is smaller, it will take the whole screen just like this. So what we want to do is, if the screen size is smaller than 1440 pixels, it will take the whole width, and also the height is 100 real height, and the margin will set to 0, so it will take up all the space without any margin like this. So we continue, we place the wrapper instead of the div, and then we add the container, and then we add the sidebar, and then we place the children. And for the sidebar, which is we are going to create this left sidebar, and we are just using a container at the sidebar, so we create this style component. So we also need to import the style from style component, and then we just add a simple word to let us know this is sidebar. So we change this to container, and then we use this layout by going to the app.js. So we go back to the app.js, and then here we use the layout to wrap the whole components. So we need to import the layout, and then if you look at this, you can see this sidebar already at the left hand side, and since my screen is very small, so it already takes up all the space without any margin. So maybe we can show this by changing the media queries at the layout. So instead of using 1440s, we just, for example, we use 640s. So now you can see it just take up these middle areas. Now we go to the index, and we also use the container, so we paste here, and then we also import the styles from style component. So we copy these and back to the index and paste to here. So now we remove this container, instead we use the container component. And what the containers has is we have a light gray colors, and the width and height is 100%, so it takes up all the layout areas. So you can see there is a light gray at this side, and we can type index at here. So now you can see the left side is the sidebar and the right side is the index page. In this part, we are going to create this index page. And sometimes when you look at your website, after refresh, the style will gone after the refresh. So to fix this, we have to install these Babel's plugin style components. So we copy these and back to our project, and then we stop the server, and we type yarn add and paste this component's name. And then at the same time, we go to the root folders and create a new file called .babelrc .babelrc, and then we copy these and back to this config and paste to here. And at the same time, we have to add another preset, and then we set as next Babel and save it. And then we have to delete this folder and let it compile again. So we delete these folders and move to trash. And then we type yarn dev. And now we back to our app and refresh. And then you can see the styles appear again. Now we go back to the project and we continue on creating the index page. So we back to the pages and click on the index.js. And then we remove this. Instead, we use a div. And then we add the image. And before we continue, we should paste the image inside our public folders. And this is the WhatsApp home. And then we go back to index.js and we use the image from Next.js. And we type the source is equal to WhatsApp home.jpg. And we set the height is equal to 250 pixels and width is also equal to 250 pixels. And then we close this image tag, and we should already import the image from next image. And then we are going to type this to sentence. So we paste this paragraph and also paste the headers on top of this paragraph, and then we click save. And now we can see the image and also the text, and we want to align this to the center. So we have to add the style at the div. So we set the style is equal to width is equal to 50%, and also the text align should be center. So now you can see the image and also the sentence is at the center of this gray area. In this part, we are going to create these headers and also the avatars. And now we are going to use the Material UI to help us in this project. So we need to go back to the documentations, and back to here we add this to command and paste to our terminal, and we also paste this. And as you can see, we will also use the avatars icons, so we are better to install the icons at this moment. So we scroll down and also copy this command and paste to our terminals. After we already install all the package that we need, we start to create these headers, and which has the avatars and the icons groups. So we back to our components and go to the sidebar, and at the bottom we create another style component. It's called headers. As you can see, we use display flags, so it will in the row directions, and the position is sticky, so it will not move. And we can also see the space between is being used in justified content, and we are also use a borders bottom. And as you can see, we have a very subtle borders at the bottom. So we go back to the top, and instead of using this sidebar, we use the headers. And then after that, we create the user avatar. So again, we go down to the bottoms and we paste it at here, as I do not want you to just look at me type one by one, so we paste to here. And this means that we use a cursor, which when you mouse over these avatars, the mouse should become a fingers. And for the hover, if the mouse is over the headers or the avatars, the opacity will change to 0.8. And you can see we also use the Material UI avatar, so we try to import. So we back to the documentations and we import this from the Material UI. So we back to the top and paste to here. And inside this, now we can use the user avatar. And then we are going to add the source. And we just copy the pictures from the internet and we paste to here and save it. Now we run the server again by typing on dev. Now we can see the headers and also the avatars, and when we mouse over the avatars, you can see there is a slight change in the opacity. Now we start building these icon groups. So we go back to the sidebar.js and then we go down to the bottoms and create another component called icons group. And then this is just a empty styled component. And we use a div and then we use add here inside the headers, and then we type icon groups. And you may think why we have to create these no style components, and this is because this is much easier to see. If we go to here, you can see we use display flags. So and then we use space between. So this means that we have the space between the icons groups and the avatars rather than each of these icons. So you can see there are the space between here rather than the space between each of these icons. And now we can add the icons inside the icons group. The first one is the story icons, but we do not have the story icons inside the Material UI, so we have to use the image. So we copy the image and paste to here, and now we have the story.svg, and then we back to the sidebar.js, and then at here we add the image with source is equal to story.svg, and then we save it. Now you can see the story icon at here, and now in order to make it like a button, we have to use the icon buttons to wrap the image. We paste to here. Also has to import the icon button, so we paste icon button and then we save it. Now we back to the website, and now you can see when the mouse over the story icon, you can see the effect at here, and you can also see the mouse become a fingers when we move over the buttons. And now we also add another buttons, and which is the chat button. So we duplicate this and then we remove this with the chat icon, so we can type. We can go to the documentation and then we search chat. Now we can see there is chat at here, so we copy this and paste to here to import the chat icon, and then inside this we use the chat icon and save it. Now you can see we have the story icon and also the chat icon, but in real WhatsApp you can see there is a 3 dots here, and we can see when we click on this it shows the menus, and then we log out from this menu. And in the next part we are going to create these menu. This part we are going to create these icons to pop up the menus. But we are not just use that vertical icon. We have to pop up the menu. So we have to create our own custom vertical, custom raw vertical.js. And if you look at this material UI documentation, inside this menu, you can see it has an example. So we can just copy this and paste to our project, and then we just save it, and then we back to the sidebar, and then we import this custom more vertical. So we go to here and type custom vertical more. Now if you look at this website, you can see it has not defined. So we have to import by ourselves. So we go to the top and then we import the custom more vertical from custom more vertical. Now we can see when we click on this, it pop up the logout menu, but the direction has a little bit difference, and we should not use this as the icon. So we have to back to our icon button and search, and then we search more, and then we can see this one, and then we copy this and go to our custom vertical components. And instead of using this dashboard, we replace this with the icon. So we paste this and we copy this and back to here. Now we can see we have this icon, and we should use the icon buttons. So we type icon button, and then we also change this to icon button. And we can remove this, and then we also remove all of this and save it. And we can see the button is in the next line. This is because we use the div here, so we have to use React fragment rather than the div, so we delete this one. And now you can see the more vertical icon is on the right side rather than in the next line. So now we are going to correct this direction. So if you look at the real WhatsApp, you can see it should be in these directions. So we have to change the direction of the menus. So now we go back to our custom vertical, and at the here, you can set the options. And if you look at the pop-up playground, you can see we also has this testing playground. And now we can copy this. And because we want to place start from the bottom right, and then the menu we want to start from the top right, so we paste to here, we click here. Now this should be the same direction as the real WhatsApp. You can see this is start from the perspective of the icon, this is the bottom right, and from the perspective of the menu, this is the top right. So we copy this and paste to our project and save it. Now if you back to here, you can see the direction is correct now, and now we can change this menu. And now we back to here, there should be 7 icons, 7 menus items, so we need to add 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we have to change this to new group, create a room, and profile, keeping the same, and archive, and start, and this is settings. Now we can see we all has these menu items, and you can see there's a great light gray colors when we hover over the menu. And now you can see which is the same as the real WhatsApp. In this part we are going to create this searching area. And this search area contains 4 parts. And the 4 main parts include the search chat, and this is red circled, and which has a gray background colors, and as you can notice, this has a light gray borders. And we also has a search bar. This is the blue area which contains the search icon, and also this input field. So now we back to the search bar components and go down to the bottoms and paste this search chat style component, and you can see this has a light gray colors. And we also add the borders, so we can see that if we add this underneath this header component, so we type search chat and save it. Now you can see it has a light gray at the sidebar, and you can see this has a borders. And now we continue on the search bar, which hold the icons and also the input field. So we back to our project and go down to the bottoms and add these search bar components, and which used to display as flags. And we also add some padding, so the search icon and also the input field will not too close to the edges. And we also will create a round corners. If you notice, this is a round corners. And we will also add a borders at the bottom. As you can see, this is a light gray borders at the bottom of the input field. So if you look at this, we have the display is flags, the border radius, and also we have the border at the bottom, and we also have the paddings. So we go inside the search chat. So we, instead of using the closing tag, we use open again and paste to here, and which is the search bar. So we save it. So you should notice that we already create the search bar area with white background colors, and there's a borders at the bottom. So now we are going to add the icon and also the input field inside this search bar area. To add the search icon, again we go to the material icon and click on this and copy this import sentence and back to our sidebar and go to the top and import this, and inside this we add the search icon and save it. Now we already see the search icon appear. Now we have to add the input field. So we back to the sidebar and go down and paste the input field. And now we try to set not the style, no style, and see what happened, and go to the top and go inside the search bar and type search input. Now you can see the input field appear, and what we want to do is to set the width to 100% so that people can type the text at this size. So we go to the bottom and set the width to 100%. Now we also want to hide this border, so we type border none. So now we can type the text inside this input field in full width, and so this is how to create this search. This part we are going to create this light blue notification part in the WhatsApp. So there are three main components. One is the notifications, which is red circled one, and the other is the avatars. And the last part is the notification text, which contain the text, the link, and also an icon. And as you can see, there are two icons that we need. One is the notification of icons, and the other is the arrow forward. So we go to here and search notifications of. So we copy this and back to our sidebar and go to the top and paste to here. And the other is the arrow forward. So we search arrow forward and we copy this, and again we paste to our sidebar.js. And the first part is we are going to create this light blue part. So we go to the bottoms and create a style component. So we can see the display is flag, so these two things is aligned in a row direction. And we have the space around for the justify content, and the align item center is to make sure that these two is aligned vertically at the center. And we have, of course, the light blue background, and also get some paddings at about 10 pixels. So we go to the top, and which should be above the search bar. So we type notification. And now if we go back to our website, you can see it already appeared at here. And now we want to create this white avatar. So we back to the notifications components and First, we have to go to the bottoms and create these notification avatars, and you can see we again use these avatars. I think we already import on the top. So now we go to the here and type notification avatar, and inside this we add the notification of icon that we just import at here. So we go down and place at here and click save, and let's see what happened. Now you can see we cannot see the notification of icon because it is also in white color. So we have to add the style to correct the color to be light blue, and which is the same as the background. So we can copy from the notification style component and back to here and type color is equal to this one. Remember to add the hash and save it. Now we can see it appeared. Now what we miss is the text, so now we are going to create the text. So we back to the project, the sidebar, and back to the bottom again and paste this notification text, and which is displayed in flags, and the flags direction is column, because at here you can see this is in the column directions. So we already has the notification text, and so we back to the top, and inside this we paste here. The first thing is we want to add the text of get notifications of new message, and then we have to add this link and also the arrow forward button or the icon. So we paste the A tag which has the, and then we are going to add the icon buttons, and the icon is that we just import. So we use the icon button to wrap this thing and then paste to here and open a tag and close. Now we can see all the things appear here, but because this is in the column directions, so you can see the arrows is not in line with this A tag. So we have to create a div to wrap all the things and then add the styles. So of course the style is displayed equal to flags again, so it should in row directions. And now the other thing is this is very large compared with the text, so we also have to add the inline style to the icon. So we add the style is width equal to 15, and also the height is also equal to 15, and we should add one more curly bracket. So now you can see it already at the right side, and then we also want to add the aligned item center. So this will not like this, some is more likely at the bottom, so we have to add the aligned item center, and we should add an S here. So this look much better. So we already create this notification successfully, and now we can go to the next part. And now we are going to create these chat components, and the chat component contain the containers and the friends avatars, so we show the pictures when it has picture, otherwise it just show a great avatars. And also it has the chat container which contain the names, the latest message, and also the date. So we back to the project and go to the components folders, and then we create a new file called chat.js, and then we type our auth, and then at here we are going to use the moment, because at last you can see we have to show the time, show the date. So we back to our server, we stop this, and then we type yarn add moment, and we are going to replace this again with our auth. I don't know why it output wrongly. So we click enters, and then we click save. Now we are going to add the containers, the style containers at the end of this file, And we are going to use display flash is because we want to display the avatars and also these chat containers in the row directions. And we also set the align item to center, so which all of these will align vertically at the center. And of course we have to use the cursor pointer to make it like a button, so we can mouse over it and it will become a finger. And we add the rubric, so if the message is too long, it will go to another line. And we also want to add a light gray or darker gray colors, so when the mouse over it, it will highlight it. Now we already has the moment, so we import the moment from moment. Now we start the server again by typing yarn def, and if you compare with the chat.json, at last we want to pass the latest message, timestamp, and also the photo URL, which one of these has the photo URL, just like this one. So we copy the photo URL and we will pass this as props. So we go to the chat and go to here and type photo URL and also the name, the timestamp, and also the latest message. And now we are going to change this to container. And of course we have to go back to the sidebar and change this to chat component. So we remove this and change to chat. So of course we have to import from the components. So we have to go to the top and import the chat from the chat. Now if you want to see what happened, we have to go to here and, for example, we pass the latest message and we go to the sidebar and then we pass the latest message as props. So we type latest message is equal to chat.latest message. So we save it. Now we can see the latest message shown, and when the mouse over it, there is a light gray over the top. And before we continue, we are going to pass all the things to the chat component. So including the latest message, the name is equal to the chat dot. We're going to see what happened inside the data. So we go to the chat.json, we can see it has the photo URL, the name, and also the latest message, and of course the timestamp. So we use the name, so the chat.name, the timestamp is equal to chat.timestamp, and also what we're missing is the photo URL is equal to chat.photo URL. So what we already passed is already become the props. And now we are going to add the friends avatars. So we back to the chat components and go to the end of the file and we paste this, and this is the friend avatars. And now we are going to display the friends photos, the friend avatar. So we have the source is equal to the photo URL. So we close this component, and the avatar is not defined because we haven't imported the avatar. So we have to import from the material UI. So now we already import this. Now you can see we have the friends photos inside our chat components. And now this is the most tricky part, is to pass the name, the latest message, and also the time. So we are going to create a div, and which is the name and also the latest message and also the time. And for the timestamp, we are going to use the moment, and we convert this to local time, and we are going to multiply the seconds 1000, and then we use dot format and then LT for the local time. So now if you look at the component, you can see it already has the name, the latest message, and the time, But how can we display it like a real WhatsApp? We need the help of using the grid. So what we are planning to do is we are going to divide this into a grid with 2 rows and 3 columns, and the name contains 2 fractions for the first row, and the date only contained a 1 fraction, and the latest message will contain the whole second row. So now we create a chat container to make this happen. So we use the chat container. You see we already set it display as grid, and this means we have 3 columns, and we also add a borders, because you can see we have a light borders at here, and then we have a gap, and also you can see we already set the name contain 2 fractions, and this contain 1 fractions, and the latest message contain 2 fractions, and actually we have a dot here, and I also talk a little bit wrong because we should only contain this only has a white space rather than contain 2 fractions. So we use the chat containers to contain these items. Now you can see there is nothing happened yet, and we just see it has some gap in between because we haven't named it as the name, the time, and also the latest message. So we have to add the style. For example, in here we have to add the style is equal to the grid area name, and this is latest message, and this is the time, and we also want to set the font size, and maybe we take a look first. Now you can see the position is correct now, and we want to set the font size of the time to be smaller, so we go to here and set the font size is 14 pixels. Now you can see this is much better, and this is how to create the chat items in the sidebar. In this part, we are going to use the Next.js dynamic route. So when the user click on this, it will go to the chat box, and we can create a dynamic route by adding the square brackets to the page. And if you're not familiar with Next.js, you can take a look on our Next.js course. So now we back to our project, and we first go to the page folders, and then we create a folder called chat, and then under this we create a file called id.js, and then we type auth, and then we change this to chatbox. Now we type something here. So now we can go to chat and type some random ID, and now you already can see the DDDD here. So we can enter the chat box by using this format. So now we are going to create the chat box, and at this moment we just create a very simple style components, and we just add the container, which we set the displays as flags, and the background color is the same as the index page, which is a light gray, and we set the width is 100%. And on top, of course, we need to import the style from the style component, and then we change this to container, and now we can see this light gray, and now we want to enter the chat page by using this button rather than typing the path by ourselves. So we have to use the Next.js use route. So we go to the chat component, and which is this component, and then on top we are going to use the use router. So first we are going to create a router, and then we import the use router from the Next.js router, and then we go to create the enter chat is equal to the router dot push, and then we have the chat, and At this moment, we just type some random ID, and because we just want to focus on the UI first, and then we link this to these and the chat functions. Now if we back to our page and now we try to click on this, now you can see we already go to the chatbox. This part we are going to add the details to the chatbox. So we go back to our project and go to the components, and then we create a new file called chatcontent.js, and then we type rafce, and then we create a container by using style components. So we have to import the style component, import style from style components, and you can see we display in flags, and the flags direction is columns. And because we will have the headers, the message, and also the input box in these directions, so we back to here and we change this to container, and then we also add the headers component, and the headers component is white in colors and it has a white box border, so it sticks to the top and it will use the display as flags. So we type header, and then we go to the index of the user page, the chat page, and then we have to replace this with our chat content. So we save it. Now you can see it replaced with headers. And then we are going back to the chat content and continue to add the avatars. So for example, we have to paste a avatar from the material UI. And then we also have to add the header info, which you can see in a normal WhatsApp. You have the name and also the activity. For example, you have the last active hours at the top, so you have this header info. So we go back to the top and paste this header info, and then we are going to add the name. For example, your friend's name is Emma, and then at here we paste the div. For example, the last active is 3 hours ago. So you can see at the bottom we have set the h3 has the margin bottom of pixels, and the div is gray in colors. So if you look at here, you should see the headers with Emma and last active 3 hours. And the last thing is we have to add 2 more icons. So we're back to the top. We have to add 2 icons, so we use 2 icon button. And then one is search icon, and the other is more vertical icon. And now we have to import this search icon and more vertical icon. So we go to the material and then we type search, and then we type, and then we copy and paste to the top. And also we have to search more vertical. Again, we copy this and paste to here. So we save it. Now we can see all of these already appeared on the top, but you can see the width a little bit weird because it do not use the full width. So we go to the id.js and we should add a chat container to make it in full width. So now we type constant chat container is equal to style.div, and this just has a very simple mission, is to add the flash is equal to 1, and then we use this to wrap the content, and we should type this as chat container. So we save it. Now you can see it used the full width, however they all stick to the left hand side, so we have to just add this flash into one. So the middle one, the header info, will take the full width, take up all the space left. So the icons will be pushed to the right hand side. So we back to the check content.js and we back to the header info style, and then we have to go to here and add the flag is equal to 1, and then we save it. Now you can see it takes up all the space left and the icons will be pushed to the right. In this part we focus on creating the input box, and the input box include 3 components, and this is the input containers, and this container contains these 3 icons and also the input box at the middle. And now first we go back to the check content.js and then we add the style components, which is the input container, which is styled form, and which displays as flags and the aligns item center. So all the items, including the icons and input fields, aligns vertically center, and this will stick to the bottoms. And we also add some light gray colors, and also because we don't want the input box scroll with the message, so we set the set index of 100. And the next part is we have to create an input field, so we have to add another style component, and which is the styled input, and we have 0 outline and we do not want the borders. And because if you take a look on this final product, you can see we do not have the outline and we do not have the borders. And also you can see we have some round circle radius, so we have to add the border radius of about 30 pixels. And we also want to leave some paddings, so when the people type something here, it will not too close to the edges. And we also want to leave some margins, so it will not too close to the other 2 icons. Now we start adding this input container to the front end. So after the headers, we want to input these input containers at these positions. And then inside these, we are going to add the emotion icons and also the attach file icons. So now we have to use the icon buttons. So we paste this 2 times because there are 2 icons. But we have to use the insert emotion icon. So we copy this and go to the top and paste to here. And then we copy this and replace the search icon with insert emotion icon. So we can take a look on our app. And if you go to the chat page, we can see the emoji icons, and also the search icon should be the attach file icon. So we go to here and type attach. So we copy this and again go to the top and paste to here. And then we copy the attach file icon and replace this with replace the search icon. And now at here we are going to use this input, so we copy this one and paste to here, and we can set the placeholder is equal to type a message and save it. And then we also add another icon button and go to here and type mic and copy this and paste to here and copy and paste to here and save it. Now we can see the input box already. In the last part, we already created the input box, and in this part we are going to create the message container, so we can render the message in between the headers and the input box. So now we are going back to the project, and again we go to the check content.js, and at the bottom we go to create the message containers, and then in between the headers and the input containers, we go to add this message container. And you can see this is not in the full height, and this is because the parent, the container, hasn't created a height which is 100%. So if this is 100%, it will go to the full height. So now we already create a message container, and now we are going to add some dummy message and try to render inside this container. And now first we go to add the semicolon and save it. And back to the data, we paste the message.json, and each of these is indicate the message. And for example, this message, hello Emma, is from the user emma@gmail.com, and I think this should make sense to change back to CK Mobile because it should not hello herself. And this is the message ID, and you also got the photo URL. So now we back to the chat content.js and import the message. So we import the message from, and then we go to the data and then the message.json. So now after we already got the data, and I think we should put the S here, we can go to the message container and then we type message.map and then message, and then we create a div to show the message. So each should have a key, and you already see the JSON already has the ID, so we add the message.id, and then we display the message by using message.message because the data is message and we have the property message, so this is message.message. We close the bracket and save it. Now if we back to our website, you can see the message already displayed inside the container. In this part, we start creating the message bubble. So instead of showing each message line by line, we are going to put the message inside a bubble. So first, we are going to create a component called message.js. So later, we will use this message component to display the message. So we type auth, and then we also import the style component. So we import the style from style component, and then we create the container, and this just use one declaration which displays is equal to flags. So we will use the flags box, and then we change this to container, and then we add the style component of message bubble, and it will have the padding, so the message inside the bubble will not too close to the edges. And we also want to make the padding bottom is larger, and we have the margin bottom 10 pixels, so each bubble will not be too close to each others. And we will get the user message and also the timestamp later, so we put this first from the chat content. So we put this, and then we use the message bubble, and then we put the message inside this message bubble. Now we already create this component, so we can back to the chat content.js, and now instead of using the div, we use the message, and let's see whether it can import from the message component. So we already import on the top, and we should not use material UI, so we try again, or we import by ourselves. So we delete this from // and message, so we can delete the closing div, and we use the self closing tag, and so we delete this one, and the message is equal to the message.message, so we put in another line, and then the user is equal to the message.user, and also the timestamp is equal to message.timestamp. So we save it, and now if we look at the website, and we can see the message is inside the bubble. In the last part, we already start creating the bubbles, and now we are going to make the details of the bubbles. And this picture is the screen capture from the real WhatsApp, and you can see there is a round corners, and also there is message tail. And if this is message that from myself, it is screen in colors, and the direction of the tail is also different. So in this part, we are going to determine which message is from myself and which message is from our friends. And we are going to add the tails, and we are going to add the colors, and also we have to add the timestamp too. So let's get started. So first we are going to create this myMessage component. So we back to the message.js, and then we go to add the myMessage component. We base on this message bubble, and we are going to add the margin left, and the background color is light green, and you can see there is no round corner at the top right corner. It just has the rounded corner at the other three sides. And next we are going to create the friend message, and the friend message is white in color, which is on the left hand side, and it will not have any corners on the top left corners. So later you will see the round corner only happen on the bottom left, bottom right, and the top right, and it will not have any corners at this place. And then we are going to add the message tail, and the message tails is at the top side, but we have to add the pictures in order to help us to create a tail. So we go to the public, and then we paste the tail, and this is very easy for creating message tail because it just has one decoration. Is the margin top is -4 pixels, and we use the span. So now we are going to start adding the determine the message is from myself or from the friend. And since we do not have any backend yet, so we have to assume or let an example that the login mail is equal to ckmobile@gmail.com. So we are going to compare with the message status. So if this is the same, so this is message is from me, otherwise this is from Emma or from your friend. So we back to the message.js. Now we are going to compare, and for example we are going to create a message type is equal to, and then we are going to add the user. We are going to compare if the user is equal to the login mail, then we are going to return my message component that we just create at the bottom. Otherwise we are going to return the friend message. Now we go back to the top, and we already add the container, and then we have to add the message tail. And because we create a message type, so instead of just use the message bubble, we are going to use the message type. So we copy this and paste to here, and actually I think you already can see the difference in the website, so we can take a look. And now you already see if the message is from me, then the message will on the right hand side and the color is green. So for example, if we add one more message is from Emma, so we copy the next line, and then we type again, and then we add some random ID, and then we say nice to see you. Now you can see the message will already appeared on the left hand side. Now we have to add the tail on both sides, so we go to continue to create the tail, and we back to the message. So there are two possibilities. One is right before the message, and the other is after the message if the message is from myself. So we go to here, and again, we are going to compare if the user is not equal to the login mail, then we will render the message tail, and then we have to import the image. The image is /message tail friend.png, and this is from the public folder, and this will be svg. Now you can see the message tail. Maybe we change this to -2 pixel. So now you can see the message tail looks better. So we have to deal with another size. So actually this is very similar. So we copy this and paste to here. And if this is triple equal to the login mail, then this is my message. So we use the my.svg and then we save it. Now you can see this side also has the message tail. And the last thing is we have to pass the timestamp. The major thing is timestamp has a grade in colors, and also the size is smaller, and we will align to the right. So after we already has the timestamp, we are going to display it inside our message bubble. So the timestamp is after the message. So we go to here, and after the message, we type moment. And since we are using moment, so we have to import the moment from moment, and then moment timestamp dot format, and then local time. So we save it. Now we can see the times already appeared, but we forgot to use the timestamp to wrap the timestamp. So we type timestamp, and then we close with the timestamp style component. Now you can see the times looks much better. And one last thing is you can see we forgot to add the background to the message container. So we have to go back to the message container and then add the style components. We have to add back the background image, and also we have to fix it so it will not scroll with the message. And then we add the message or the background to the public folder. So we paste to here. So we have the background chat PNG, and then we save all. Now you can see there is WhatsApp background image at the message. In this part, we will continue to create the login page. But before we continue, there are a few fixes. First of all, we set the height of the layout to be 90 VH instead of 100 viewport height. So you can see there are a little gap in between the top and the bottom. And the next thing is inside the id.js, we set the scroll bar, and also we set the max height of 100 VH. So the height of the chat content should not be larger than 100 viewport height, so it will not overflow because of we set the max height and also the scroll bar. So now we continue on the login page. So first we go to the page folders, and which is at here, and then we create a new folder, should be the new file called login.js, and then we type our auth, and then we add the style container, the style div, and which is displayed as grid, the place item as center. So later you can see the WhatsApp icon and the login button will placed at the center of the page. And we also set the height and width. We'll take the full width, so which is 100 viewport height and 100 viewport width. And we set the background colors as the WhatsApp green. So we change this to use the containers instead of div. So we place containers, and since we use the style component, so we have to import the style from style components and save it. In order to take a look on the login page, we have to go to the app, the underscore app, and then here, instead of return the whole app, we have to return and then we have to import the login page. So we import login from the login.js. In real case, we have to check whether it has login or not to return the login. But now, because we want to check the page, we return the login page directly. So we save it and go back to our website. You can see this WhatsApp screen. And then we back to our login page. And then we add another style components called login, which hold the buttons and also the WhatsApp icon. And we will make this background color as white and also has some round corners. So we add some patterns and gaps so there is some space between the WhatsApp icon and also the login button. And now we go back to these components and we use the login containers. And then we paste the image. This is the Next.js image. So we have to import the image from next image, and we set the height and also the width is 100, and we use this external WhatsApp image. And now if you look at this, you can see there is error that you haven't set this path, this hostname, under the next.config.js. So we have to go to copy this, and then we go to the next.config.js, and then we type image, and then we have the domain, and we paste the hostname at here, and then we save it. Now you can see the problem still exists because we have changed the config. We have to recompile again. So we have to delete these .next folders, and then we cancel the server and restart the server by yarn dev. And after it compiles successfully, and if you look at the website, you can see the WhatsApp icon displayed correctly. And now we back to the app.js, and it should be go back to the login page. And then we are going to add the buttons, and we have the style, and we use the star icon as Google icon, and we haven't import the button and also the icon yet. So we have to import the buttons from Material UI, and also we have to import the Google icon. So we go to the Material icons and we can search the Google, and we click on this and copy this import and paste to here. And after it compiled successfully, if you look at the website, you can see the buttons login with Google already exist. So we can press on this and go to login later. In this part, we are going to add the Firebase as our backend. So we have to go to the Firebase website and go to click on the add project. And then we type WhatsApp clone. And then click continue. And then we disable the Google Analytics for this project and click create project. And then we click continue. And then we go to select the web. And again, we have to add the nickname for the app. So we just type WhatsApp clone. And then we click register app. And then it said we have to add the Firebase package. And we have to copy this as our Firebase config file. So we copy this and continue to the console. And then we type yarn add Firebase to add the Firebase package. And at the same time, we go to the root folders, and then we click new file, and then we type firebase.js. And inside the file, we paste the code that we just copied from the website. And then after the initialize app, we create a DB by typing constant DB is equal to get firestore, and constant auth is equal to get auth, and constant provider is equal to new Google auth provider, And at last, we have to export the DB of and also the provider. And after we import the package, we can now go to import the get firestore. And then we have to import the get firestore from Firebase firestore. And we also have to import the get auth and also the Google auth provider from Firebase auth. Now we already complete the import part. We are going to add the auth provider, so everywhere can get the user info from the Firebase. So we go to the root folder and create a new file called auth.js, and inside the auth.js we have to import the use effect, use context, the create context, and use state from React, and then we import the auth that we just created in the firebase.js file. And then we are going to create the auth context, and also we are going to create the auth provider. So we type export constant auth provider is equal to the children. So we can pass the component inside this auth provider, and then we use the use state to set the current user, and we use the capitalized letters at current user, and then we set the initial state is an null, and then we use the use effect to check whether there are users here. If there is no user, we will console log no user at the console, and otherwise it will get the token, and then it will pop up the token at the console. And at last it will return the auth context providers. We will also pass the current user to the auth providers. So we have to export the constant use of, so we can get the current user data by using use of. Now we can use this auth provider by going back to app.js, and at here we going to delete this return login, and then we are going to use the auth provider to wrap all the components, and then we import this from the auth.js, and we delete this import. And now we go back to, now we type yarn dev to run the server, and then we type localhost 3000. And now if we go to inspect, and we can see at the console there is no user displayed at the console, and this is because after the checking there is no user at here, so it returned no user. In this part we are going to create a loading page, so we have to open the terminals, and we are going to add another package called yarn add react loading. And after we install the package, we have to go to the components, and we create a new file called loading.js. In this page we use the grid components from the material UI, which has the white smoke color as the background colors, and we also has the mean height of 100 viewport height, and we will pass the type and colors to the React loading that we just installed in the terminals. And after that we can back to the underscore app.js because we want to see the loading page immediately. So we go to the app.js, and instead of return the app, we have to return the loading, and we have the type equal to bars, and we use the color which is equal to the WhatsApp color, and we can copy from the styles because we used this color before, so we copy the RGB color and back to the underscore app and paste to here. And this is a self-closing tag, so we can delete the others. And now we can back to the website, and we can see the loading is not defined because we haven't import the component. So we can duplicate these and we change the name to loading. And now we can see this. In this part, we will create the sign in and sign out function, and we want the page to switch to different page. When there is user exists, it will go to the website. Otherwise, it will back to the login page. So first, we have to back to the login.js, and we are going to create the functions, and we have to import the auth and sign in with and provider from the Firebase config file. And because we already returned the auth and providers, but we do not have the sign in with pop-up, so we delete this and we go to create the login functions. So we type constant login with Google, and then we type sign in with pop-up, and which is import from the Firebase auth, and then we pass the auth and also pass the provider, and then we go to bind these functions login with Google to our button. So we go to here and type on click is equal to login with Google, and then we also need to create a sign out. So we go to the custom vertical more, and we go to the last menu items, and here we use sign out, and we pass the auth, and we also have to import the auth. So we import the auth from the Firebase config file and also import the sign out from the Firebase auth. Now we have to back to the auth.js to switch to different pages. And first we have to create a state called loading. So we type use state, and then we type loading, and we set the initial value is true, and then if there is no user, we type the current user to be null and set the loading to be false, and otherwise we are going to set the current user to user, and we set the loading to be false again. And then we go to here. Instead of every time we return the website, we are going to return different things. One is, if it is still loading, we can return the loading page, and if there is no user, we will return the login page for the user to sign in, and if there is user, it will go to the web page. And we have to import the loading page and also the sign in page. So we go to the top and we import the loading from the components and import the login from the pages. So we save it, and remember we have to back to the underscore app.js because last time we returned the loading page whatever anything happened. So we have to delete this and save it. And now we can try to go to the website, and you can see it go to the login page because we haven't signed in yet. And you can see we have the Firebase error, and this is because we haven't turned on the Google sign in. So we go back to the Firebase website and go to the console, and now we have to go to the authentications and get started, and you have to type, we have to add the Google provider, and then we click enable, and we just choose our own email as the support mail and click save. Now if we back to our website and click the login with Google again, now we can choose our account to log in the web page, and we can also go to sign out to sign out the web page. This part we want to store the user information to the firestore, so we need to click to the firestore database and then click create database. Otherwise we cannot set the user data to the firestore, and then we click on Start in Test Mode, and then click Next, and then click Enable. So now we already start the firestore, so we can back to the auth.js, and we want to store the user data when there is user, so we can go to here, and after getting the token, we can create the user data by adding the display name, email, last seen, and photo URL, and then we use the set dot to set to the database that which is inside our Firebase config file. So we have to import the DB, and we set the collection name is users, and we want this document has the ID which is equal to the user.uid, and we will pass this user data to the firestore, and we have to import these functions including the server timestamp and the doc, and also the set doc. Now as you can see, we already import this from the firestore and also import the DB from the Firebase config file. And so we can try to take a look on our website, and we try to log in. And for example, if we log in as this account, and then we back to our firestore and we refresh the page, now we can see we have the user and we have the display name, email, last seen, and also the photo URL. Now I just create 2 more users by signing in with different accounts. So we have these CK mobiles, and also we have this online meetup. And now we want to show the user account on the sidebar. So we back to our project and we go to the sidebar.js, which is under the components. And then we are going to add the state friends. So we use the use state, and then we set friends, and this should be empty array for the initial state. And then we import the use state, and then under here, in order to fetch the friends, we are going to use the async functions. So we are going to create these async functions, and we cannot type async in the use effect, so we have to create this separately, and then we execute these functions. And the first one is we are going to find the users. The collection name is users, because if you look at our website, we are using these collections. And then we have to query, and because we just want to add friends, we don't want to chat with myself, so we are going to fetch the user where the email is not my own email, and then we get the snapshot or get the document, and then we set friends with the snapshot, and we are going to spread the data because we want to add the ID, which is the document ID, to the data. So now after we already fetch the friends, we can render at here, and instead of rendering the chat, we are going to rendering the friends. So we have the element which is very similar to this check item, so we copy and paste, and we name this as friend, and then we replace this with friend, and we will not have the timestamp and also the latest message, so we can delete this. And we just pass the photo URL and also the display name. So we can delete this and change to display name. And we also do not need to use the router. And so we can also delete this one. Delete the moment. And since we already do not have the enter chat functions at the friend components, so we have to delete this. And we change this to display name. And we back to the sidebar and we use friends.map and then friend. And then we have the friend component. And we need the key, and the key is friend.id. And the photo URL is equal to friend.photo URL. And also we have the display name is equal to friend.displayName, and ID is equal to friend.id. Now we all have the things here, and we have to import the firestore functions. So for example, we haven't import the collections, and we have to add the query and also the where and get docs. And now you can see we already import at here, and we can delete this unused thing. So we save it and we back to our website. We haven't import the use effect, so we back to here and we try to import the use effect and save it. And we also have to import the DB. So at here we have to import from the Firebase config file. So now we import all the things that we need, and it hasn't imported the query yet. And we also have to add the current user, and which is using the use of. And we also have to import the friend component, and we already import the friend component, so we save it and back to the website. And now you can see the friends already appeared on the sidebar. In this part, we are going to add the create chat function. So when the user click on the friend item, it will create chat. So we have to go back to the friend component. So we go to here, and then we import the necessary package, and which is using to add the document. And we have to use the use of to get the current user. So at here we type constant current user is equal to use of, and then we are going to add the create chat functions. And this create chat function, we will pass the friend ID, and because we already get this from the outside, so if you go back to the sidebar, you can see at here we already passed this ID to the friend component, so we can destructure at here. And so first we have to create a collections chat, and before we are going to add this new document, we have to check whether the chat already exists. So this prevents the user double click on this, and it will create more than one chat collections, but this is with the same friend. So first we are going to query where the users contain the current user UID. So the first is we are going to query the users which contain the current user UID, because there may have a lot of chat that is contains the current user UID, because this user can chat with different people, so he has different connections. So each chat will have his own ID and his friend ID. So first we are going to get all the chat that with current user UID, and then we get the snapshot, and then we are going to check if the user which contain his friend ID, if the length is greater than 0, then which means it already exists, and this double exclamation mark is to return the true or false. So if we pass the ID and it not exists yet, then we add the new document. Otherwise we just console log chat already exists. So we already prepare all the things, so we can bind these functions to the container. So we type equal and then type create chat, and then we pass the ID and click save. And now we go to the app and click on the friend, and if we refresh the page, we can see it had a new collections with the users which has the ID of these two users. You can see it starts with L and C, and in this collections it also starts with L and C. In this part we start using onSnapshot to real-time fetch the chat. We do this is because compared with fetching the users, chats are changing more often. For example, if we click on this, it will create a new chat, so it will have a new change, and if someone sends the message, it also has a change. So we are going to use the onSnapshot in this part, and so we go back to the sidebar.js, and if we go to the top, we have to import the onSnapshot, and then we are going to create a new state, and we set chat, and this is also an empty array, and we capitalize the C, and we are going to add another use effect, and we are going to point to the DB with the collection name chat, and we just want to fetch those chat with user that contain the current user. So he just needs to display the chat that he is involved. So we use the onSnapshot to get the query snapshot, and actually you can see this is very similar, but we set the chat under the onSnapshot, and so we are going to add the dot data and also the ID. And if we go to here, we now don't want to display the friends, and we also don't want to display the chat component at this time, because we have more detail need to add to the chat component later. So we just type chat.map and then chat, and we just return a simple div, and which contain the chat.id, and we also need to pass the key, and the key is equal to chat.id, and we just want to prove that we already get the chat successfully. We back to the website, we can see this document ID, and if you look at this, and the ID is exactly the same as this one, so which implies that we already get this document successfully. Last time we already get the chat data, however this chat data do not have the friend data, so it cannot display the photos and also cannot display the name. So now we are going to create a function to get the friend data. So we're back to our project and go to the root folders, and then we create a folder called utilities, because we want to create a functions that help us to get the friend data. So we type get friend data .js, And inside this, we import a few things. We have to import the get auth to get the current user. And we have to get these two functions from the firestore because we need this. And we also have to get the DB from the Firebase config. So the first is we get the current users, and then we are going to filter the friend ID. The users is not equal to the current user ID, because if you look at the data, you can see each chat has two ID. One is the user and the other is his friend. So if the user ID is not equal to the current user ID, which means this is the friend ID. And since this is the array, so in order to get the friend ID, we have to select the first one, and actually this is the only one in the array. And now we get the document by pointing to the collections users, because if you look at this, we have the users, and if we have the ID, we can point to that user. And now we get the document, and then we return this data to the component. And so now we can go to the chat item. So we go to the component, we find chat, and then we go to here because there are something that we need to change, and we cannot get the photo URL directly. So we type ID, and we have the user, and the timestamp we will deal with it later. And the latest message, we just type the default of hi at this time. And then to get the friend data, we have to add the use effect to get the friend data. And so if the user's dot length is greater than 0, then we pass the users, and then we set the friend as data. And at this time, we still do not have the state friend, so we have to add the use state and then friend. And then we place the empty object as the initial state, and we have to import the use state and also the use effect. And now we can go to the return part, and by changing this to friend.photoURL, and this is friend.displayName, and we have the latest message, and we comment this because we do not have timestamp at this moment. And then we back to the sidebar because it is loaded at the sidebar, and now we do not want to use the div, we just want to use the chat component. So let's see whether we have import the chat component on the top, and maybe we import this, so it should already on the top. Now we have the chat component, but we do not have the timestamp, and we have the key is equal to the chat.id, and also the ID is equal to the chat.id. And instead of passing this, we are going to pass the users is equal to chat.users, because if you take a look on this again, the chat only has the user data, so we have to pass the chat.users. Now we already has all of this, and now we can take a look on our website, and now we can see the get friend data haven't been imported at the chat.js. So at here we go to this one and import the get friend data and save it. Now we can see the friend data already displayed at the left hand side, and it has the avatar and also the name, and it has the latest message, the default message. So now we have to delete the unnecessary one. Is the at the sidebar there are the chat. We want to delete this ID, so we can delete this one and save it. Now there are only the avatars and the names left on the left side. In the previous part, we already get the users arrays and also the chat arrays. And now we want to let the user click on this so he can search the friends, because at the firestore you can see we have 3 users. So if the user search the friends, he should see 2 items at the sidebar. And if the user click outside the input box, we want to show the chat. So the first thing is we go back to the sidebar.js and we create a input area ref. So we use the constant input area ref is equal to use ref, and then we set as null, and we have to import the use ref. And then we go down to the search input, and at here we are going to add ref is equal to input area ref, and then the placeholder we type search or start a new chat. Now you can see the word already displayed on the input box. And then we back to the sidebar and go to the top and add another use effect that to check if the input area contains the user that click on this, which means if this is not inside the input area, we should set the search friends to be false, and it just lasts for 3 seconds. And if this is clicked inside the input area, then we set the search friends to be true. And let's see whether we have created a state. So we create a use state, and then we set search friend, and then we go down to the render part, and instead of just list out the friends or user, we set the condition rendering. So if this is search friends, then we will display all the users. Otherwise, it will display the chat item. So he can click on this and go to chat with his friends. So we save it, and we go to our website. It said the initial state haven't been set, and so we go to the top and we should set this as an empty array, and this should be false because initially we should display the chat, and it just set to be true if the user click on the input area. Now you can see if we click on this, it display all the friends that he can click on this and create chat. And now we want to go to the sidebar and display the user picture. So we go to the sidebar and then add the avatar. Instead of hard code this picture, we are going to use current user dot photo URL. Now we can get his own user profile picture. If we back on the website and click on this, you can see at here each chat have different path, and this is the same as the chat collections. You can see if this is start from JN. You can see here it is also start at JN. And now we want to server-side render the chat. So we go to the detail page, and which is the id.js, and right before the material UI we go to create the get server-side props, and then it get the ID from here, and this is because we named it as square bracket ID, so we have to use .id, and then we go to select the dot that inside the chat collections with the ID JN. For example, at here we select this one, and then this has the users. And since this is a complex data, so this is better to use JSON.stringify. And the ID we also returned on the top, so we go to here, we paste the chat and also the ID on the top, and then we pass the chat to the chat content. So we go to the chat content, since we want to display the friend details, so we create a state called friend, and we are going to pass the chat that we just passed at the previous page, because we just passed this as chat. So we have to destructure the chat, and later we also want to use the ID, and we name it as chat ID, which is the ID that get from here. So we go back to the chat and we destructure the chat ID. And now we are going to use the use effect, and inside the chat path, actually this is the same as this one. We have the users, and we are going to check if the user's length is greater than 0. And we delete this console log, and then we use the getFriends function to get the friend data, and we already used this before, so we don't spend time on explaining these functions, but we have to import from the utility folders. And now we have the friend data, and we also depends on the chat ID, so every time it click on different person is to change the profile picture. And now we have the friend data, and it said we haven't imported dog, so we go to the ID and we have to import the dot and import the get dot, and go back to the chat content, and here we want to set this is the friend dot display name, and we also have the source equal to friend dot photo URL. We refresh the page. It said the DB haven't been imported, so we go to the ID and import the DB from the config file. And also we have to import the use date and also the use effect. Now we can see it shows the profile picture and also the name. So if we click on the other, it also changed the profile picture and also the name. So I want to show you that if you do not add this as dependency, so every time you click on each one, it also shows the same picture because it just load one time. So if we depend on the change of the ID, so every time it detects the change of the ID, this one, it will change the profile picture and also the name. We want to add the send message functions. So first we have to add the state to store the input value. So we create use state, and then we set the input, and we capitalize this letter. And then at the input component, we want to detect on change, and then the input value will change with the user typing. So now we set the input as the event.target.values. And now we are going to create the send message functions. So we go to the top, and at here we add the send message functions, and there are a few things that this function is doing. The first thing is this part is to store the user active time. So when the send message, it will go to the user and go to the user ID. So for example, if you go to here, and this is the example, and it will add the last scene at this document. And the next thing is, of course, we want to send the message. So if this is going to send a message, it will go to the chat, and for example, it will go to this chat ID and send the message, and which will inside the message collections. And let's see whether we have an example. There's no example. And the document will include the timestamp, message, user, and the photo URL. And the last thing is we want to add the latest message and corresponding time, because if you remember, we will list out the latest message at the sidebar, and also we will have the times displayed at this position. And of course, at last, after we send the message, we have to clear the input values. And since we used many firestore functions, so we have to go to the top and import them to the project. And we also use current user ID, so we have to use the use of. So we type constant current user, and then we is equal to use of, and we have to import from the Firebase config file, and which should be the auth provider. And there is one thing that we also have to import the DB from the config file. So I think this is good to go. So let's try to send the message. And we haven't set the initial state should be the empty string, so we back to the input value and change this to empty string. Have to bind the send message functions to the button, to the input. But first we have to add the button which is hidden, and this will disable when there is no input values. And then we bind the onClick functions, which is send message, to send the message. And now if we try to type hello and press enter, and also we have to add the value is equal to input. And then now we can try to send another message. For example, we type hello, and now you can see the message is cleared and the latest message shown on the sidebar. And if you go back to the Firestore, you can see we have this latest message at the chat, and we can also see the new collections, which is message, is already added to the chat. And now if you go to the users, you can see it has the last seen added to the users document. In this part, we want to show the information that we just add to the Firestore in the previous part. And you already see that we have the latest message, and this is the dummy message, so we can go to the chat and delete that one. So we go to the chat.js and delete this and change this to empty string. And we also can now show the timestamp. And first we want to check whether it has timestamp, because if they do not start any chat, there will be no timestamp. So we check if there's timestamp. We are going to format the timestamp, and we change it to date, and then we format to local time. Otherwise we just place empty string. And now we save it and see whether we can successfully add the timestamp. Now it already has the time of 9:32 p.m. and this is also a dummy time because we just used a JSON data. So we go to the chat content, and under this, instead of just typing 3 hours, we are going to use the moment, and we type friend.last seen, and then we also need to change to date and then dot from now, and we also import the moment on the top. So now we can see we have the latest message, the time, and also the active time. In this part, we are going to render the message, and now we do not need this dummy message, so we can delete this at the check content.js. And we are going to add the use effect to fetch the message, and this is going to the chat collections, and we point to the chat ID, and inside this we go to the message collections, and if you look at this, you can see we have the message collection. So we go to the chat and go to the ID and go to the message collection, and then we order the message by timestamp with the ascending orders. So the last message will be at the bottom, and then we are going to check the real-time change, and we go to get the snapshot and set the documents, and we look through the data, and the data we also add the document ID, and also we want to convert the timestamp so the moment.js can understand. After we already do all of these, we set the message, and this is the array, and every time we change the chat ID, which means every time we click on different people, we should also has different message. So you can see we has not defined the message yet, and so we have to go to create a state, and we set message and save it, and this should be the empty array. And we also haven't import the query function from the firestore, so now we have to import them. So we go to the top and import the query and also the where. And now we also have to add order by, so we have to type order by, and now we can see it has the message displayed inside the chatbox. But now you can see no matter you are the sender or the receiver, it will have the same style. For example, we type hi there, and we have not import the document, so we have to add the dot. So we check, it still has the server timestamp haven't been imported, so we go to server timestamp and import from the firestore, and we can continue to see whether there is error. The add dot, so we go to the top and add dot. Now we try again. Now you can see both of them has the same style, even this is the owner and this is the receiver, and they should have different style. So we have to change the style by going to the message component, and this is because we haven't set the current user email. So we type constant current user is equal to use of, and we have to import the use of. And now instead of hardcode the email, we have to use the current user dot email. And let's see whether it works. It said the use auth haven't been defined. Now you can see if we type at this side, they should have different style. Now you can see both of them have the same message, but they have different style. If this is owner, it will display on the right hand side. If this is received from his friend, it will display on the left hand side. Last time we already rendered the message, and this time we want to server side render the message. So if you click on this link, we want the message load up immediately. Rather, you may see render one by one. And now we go to the id.js, and which is under the chat folders, and we already has a get server side props at this page. And last time we already server side rendered the chat, and this time we want to render the message. So we go to the chat collections, and we go to the specific chat and get that message. And actually we have already done this before in the chat content, and you can see we has this one. Actually this is very similar, and now we also get the query, but we do not have the snapshot because we just want to pre-build when this is running the web. So we query this message and also ordered by the timestamp with ascending orders, and then we have the snapshot, and then we also get the message. At last we will return this as message, and this is json.stringify. And then we go to the top and we want to pass this message to the chat content. So we have the message props equal to message, and then we go to the chat content. But first we have to import a few things, which is including the collections, order by, the query, and also the get docs. So I think we already import all we need, and so we can go to the chat content, and then we pass the message props at here, and then we add use effect, and then set message, and then we use json.pass and then message props. And now we already has the message props, and then if we already pre-built this, we can set the message at here, and also we can still use the real time. For example, if we go to here, let's see whether it has error. Now we go to here. Now we can see the message already appear. Now we can type hi, and you can see it also appeared at this part. So it worked correctly. In this part, we want to make the chat can automatically go to bottom, because when you type some message, you can see we need to scroll down to see the message if the number of message is too much. So now we are going to create these functions. So now we back to the chat content.js, and we go to the top, and we are going to make a reference because we want to let the function or let the program know which part we want to point at. We want to point at the bottom of the message box. So we go to add not a constant message and ref is equal to use ref, and now we want to import the use ref from the React, and now we have to import the useref from we add. And after we already import, we scroll down to the message container, and right before the end of the message container, we add a div which has the margin of 100, and the reference is message and ref, a function to scroll to this page. So we go to the top, and then we add another functions, and which is go to bottom, and then we will scroll to the message and ref, and the behavior is smooth. And next we are going to use the use effect, so it will detect it every time, and we want to detect it every time when the message changes. So every time the message changes, it will scroll down to the bottom. So now we want to test the app. Now you can see it already scroll down to the bottom. So if we type another message again, you can see it will scroll to bottom. So this is how to make the scroll to bottom work. In this part, we are going to add the fuzzy search to our app, because if you click on this, you can see we haven't do any search function on this input bar. And now we want to type something and go to search our friend instead of listing all the friends here. So with this, we have to add another library. And so we have to type yarn add, and what we are going to use is firestore.js, and which can help us to do the fuzzy search. And after we already installed, we can go to the sidebar.js, and then go to the top, and we create import and fields from fields.js. Now after we already import, we create another state called input. The input will bind to the search bar, and so it will detect what the user type in. So we type use state, and then we type input, so it set the input values, and we set the default state is empty string, and then we go to here and add the fields, and this is search based on the email and the display name. And then we go to get the friends result, and this based on the user input. And then we scroll down to the search input, and then we place on change is equal to the event, and which is set input value to be event.target.values. And then now instead of typing friends here, we are going to use friends result. So now we can try on the website, and now if we click on this, we cannot see any results. But if we type the name, you can see the result, but there is a little bit weird because it do not display anything here. And if you go to any places and type console log friend results, you can see there is a big difference between friend results and the friends. So for example, I think we should type the name, so this is much easier to search. So now if we click on this, and now we go to the friends result, we can see instead of displaying the photo URL, it is inside a property called item. So now we have to destructure under the friends result. So we scroll down to the friends result, and now we have to destructure this as item. So now we have to go to type item, and then the item ID and also the item display name. So we save it, and we have to add a bracket to wrap the item. Now we can see if we type Cyrus, it can display the friend name and also the picture. So if we delete all of this, it will not display anything. And so this is how to create a fuzzy search inside our app.